They say it takes a village to raise a child. I'm Kathryn Ryan, and here we draw on my conversations with experts on 9 to Noon to help you navigate family life. Time to welcome Noa Woolloff, who was 16 and at the end of year 12 when he found out he was going to become a father. Too scared to tell his parents and some of his friends, he bottled up the news, fearing the stigma associated with being a teen parent. His baby daughter arrived, and Noa finally told his family, who supported him, as did the family of his girlfriend. Well, Noa went on to become head boy of Aotea College in his final year. He started a social enterprise and is now working for the youth organisation Inspiring Stories, speaking to schools around the country and to leadership conventions about his journey into fatherhood. Along the way, as his story became public and got a lot of sharing online and in social media, he also learned a thing or two about some of the stereotypes that can be directed the way of teen parents. Noa's daughter's now 3. He's with me in the Wellington studio. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Yes, definitely is.
And 3's a really interesting age as well.
Finally out of the terrible twos, they call it. So now she's just talking so much. She's growing up a proper small little human now, and just blows me away every day.
Let's go back to where you began, though, because this is the story that has struck a chord. And at the time you found out your girlfriend was pregnant, you were about to become a dad. I mean, is it just like the brain explosion?
Yeah, exactly. I think at whatever age you are, if you're 16, 25, 30 or 40, becoming a parent is probably one of the biggest challenges that life could ever throw at a person. And when you're almost 17 years old and you're gunning towards a leadership position at school, and there's also a really, really bad stereotype around teen pregnancy. I had so many crazy thoughts running through my head of what other people might think of me, of what I might even think of myself, because back then, the way I saw a teen dad was somebody who sat in their couch and just ate Doritos, watched Netflix all day, and I was really scared I was going to fall into that stereotype.
What was the thought process or the thought processes? You kept it to yourself for a while, and this is something else not uncommon when a hard problem presents itself, and B, when you're a teenager. If I just don't do anything, maybe it'll just go away.
Yeah.
And was that some of it? Was it simply not knowing what to do? Was almost a paralysis?
Definitely. And I think because I did hide this from my parents for a very, very long time, which was really, really hard on myself and obviously them as well. But all of my close friends who I spoke to, they have been so supportive, but nobody said congratulations to me. So this was just so completely negative in many ways around my life when I was going through this. Because all of my friends I'll go speak to and I'd say, hey guys, I'm going to become a parent. Their first reaction is kind of freaking out and like, oh my God, what are you going to do with your life? So that made me think exactly the same too.
How did you keep it? I mean, this is the age of social media.
I know.
You're of a generation where nothing is not known by everybody,
Yeah.
and well, actually that's not true, isn't it? It's funny, it's some of this personal stuff, the most important stuff, that does get kept, and particularly maybe kept from parents. And was there just like kind of a code that even though your mates might know this stuff and might talk among themselves, people agreed basically to keep it from you folks?
I guess so. Like it was a really, really big situation to be in, so I think people really did appreciate that in many ways. But to this day I still don't know how it didn't kind of filter to my parents eventually, and it wasn't to the point I actually had to tell them about that. But
did you almost hope it would happen?
Yes and no. Yes
you
and
just
no.
didn't want that, you just didn't want to deal with that.
And I think a big thing for me was just not wanting to be a failure to my parents, because I do love them so much, and I was really scared that their perspective on me would change and their view on me would change too, which I found out later that definitely wasn't the case. I just kind of built this up all internally in my head, how negative this situation would really be.
So when that moment came, how did it come and how was it handled?
Yeah, so I planned to write a letter. That was my plan from when I heard the news initially. It's like, cool, I'm going to write a letter to my parents, put it in the letterbox and run away for a bit, because I was so scared I just didn't have the courage to speak to them face to face. But at the time, I gained that head boy position at my school, so obviously the school was aware of my situation, and they joined me up for a really awesome counsellor, this lady called Nicole, and she really helped me with the transition to tell my parents. And I remember her talking to me, and she said, Noah, it's like you're standing on top of a diving board, and the longer you're up there, the scarier and the harder the fall is going to be. And I think many more people can also relate to that feeling. If that's bungee jumping and standing up at a really high height for too long, you start to overthink it, and it becomes a lot more intense than it really should be. And at this point, Kayla was about 2.5 months old, so I saved up to buy my first car so I could visit her after school. And to make things a bit more complex, my mum had also had my baby brother 2 days before Kayla was born. So a lot of different moving pieces. But when my counsellor said that to me, how it's like you're standing on top of a diving board, I just gave my mum a text, and I was like, Mum, I've got to come home, and I've got to tell you some really big news. So I drove home one time at lunchtime from school, and I kind of popped the big statement saying that I was a father. And initially she thought that I was coming out being gay, which was quite
there'll
funny.
be all sorts of things running through her mind with that text.
Yeah. She looked me dead in the eyes. She said, I know why you've been acting a bit strange lately. Is it because you like boys? And I was like, no, Mum, it's almost quite the opposite. And I told her the situation I was in, and she just showed me that if you stand up with your head held high, nobody can judge you, and that life's a blessing and nobody should be able to take that away from you either.
So you'd already had your baby before you told your mum?
Yes, so at that time Kayla was about 2.5 months old.
What was happening with your girlfriend's family, with Kyla's mum as well? Because this is the other thing, how was that dynamic working?
They were they've been hats off to that family for sure. They have supported me so much, and they just said, look, this is your thing to deal with.
And the school did too, which is interesting.
And the school did too.
Because there's so much discussion around the privacy rights of young students, both their human right to privacy, but also what is safe in dealing with a whole lot of situations they might be in.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting, isn't it? Like, what would your comment be on schools and counsellors and where that situation sits between, do parents have a right to know, or should they know, and is it part of a safe issue that they know, and actually letting a young person do what they need to do? I think because that was communicated with me quite early on with my counsellor. They said this is all completely confidential. It's between you and me, Noah. That's what Nicole said to me, but she also explained and described, if whatever situation or circumstances you are in, if it's going to cause harm to yourself or somebody else, that's when somebody else has to step in. When did you first see your baby, and what was that moment like? Oh,
it was crazy. So my baby brother was obviously born on the Friday night at Wellington Hospital. So I saw my mum after her birth and a whole family around her, and just celebrating.
It's just surreal.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. And celebrating the life of my little baby brother, Jimmy.
Yeah.
And then 2 days later, on the Sunday, I was working my part-time job at New World, stacking Granny Smith apples. And I got a text saying that Kayla was about to be born. And I texted a group of my really, really close friends, Taryn and Tyler. And they were on their learner licenses at the time. So they picked me up really late on the Sunday night. And we drove into Wellington, and I held Kayla for the first time. And it was... I'm sure lots of other parents can definitely relate. It's one of those memories and moments that will stay in your life forever, and it just made the whole situation so much more real for me. And I also understood that my family wasn't there, and that was really hard for me. It was just myself holding my little baby girl, and my parents weren't there to witness or experience that, which I'm pretty disappointed in myself for that personally. But I'd go to school the next morning. I got home at about 5 a.m. and I didn't say a word to anybody.
This is a lot of stress.
Yeah.
And now also with the birth, quite extreme emotion going on.
Yeah.
And did you just carry it? Did you just keep on doing what you had to do?
I just bottled it up internally. Really, I was listening to lots of music at the time. I was writing and just trying to put on a really strong face to be present in my classes, not let my mind drift too much, but also thinking, what else am I going to do? Because I am a father now. And where is my direction, my career pathway, and all of that? I just had so many different crazy thoughts running through my head.
Did that change the moment you held your daughter? Like before that, had it just been a problem to solve?
Yes.
And now that there was a little person here?
Yes, a little human.
It was a whole different set of issues.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. It just put things into perspective so much more. It made it so much more real.
So having broached this with your mum, does this get things on track with the sort of support you needed?
Yes, definitely. So I told my mum, and then my mum said, cool, awesome, we're going to go see Kayla straight away. So we drove up, and my mum held Kayla and almost exploded with happiness. And then we also told my dad, and obviously it's a big shock for a family if I hid this. And it's not like I'm becoming a father. I was a father at that point. So it was kind of just like, boom, you're a granddad and you're a grandma. welcome to the club. But in terms of my family, the support there from both my mum and my dad has been absolutely incredible, and they've taught me some really, really awesome ropes around parenthood, and just some good learnings along the way.
You had to get into that headspace, obviously, as you went along. What was the experience that you can share? As you say, this is shared by any new parent, but particularly for someone who is young and is where you're at in life, like getting your schooling done, and as you say, what are my decisions going to be now? What was that early experience of parenting like, and how did you make that dynamic work in the situation you were both in?
It was really, really tough, in a lot of ways, as I'm sure it is for every parent starting out. You don't get a manual or like a script or a handbook when you become a parent. You've got to find your own style of parenting as you go and understand what is right from what is wrong in many ways. So I think it's just a massive learning journey.
Were you guys living together in the same house, or were you?
No,
you were,
no,
okay,
we weren't.
so that's something else as well, isn't it? Is working out the shared care and the shared responsibility, and also you don't have that other person all the time to just hand over to. But I presume there was a lot of family support.
A lot of family support.
Yeah.
A lot of family support.
So if it was a bad night, a long night, someone not sleeping, you not sleeping, there was someone there to talk
Definitely.
to or to hand over to
do the shifts, the night shift. Yeah.
And what were the moments, especially in those early days? Like, do you have some standout memories of thinking, I can't understand why this baby won't stop crying, and I don't know what else I'm going to... Like those moments, again, that every parent had. Are there some that stand out like that?
Not necessarily any standouts. I'm really lucky that Kayla is such a fantastic sleeper. She's almost like a little teenager in that sense. But she's got her own little awesome bossy attitude to go with it, which is really, really cool.
Well, that's something else as you move through the phases of parenting as well. At what point did this become public? Because this is really at the heart of what you're doing now, I think, which is to change the way people view and therefore sometimes behave and do or don't support younger parents.
Definitely.
So when you started talking publicly about this, what happened?
Yeah, great question. I think more or less just what I really, really try to do is, one, help more young parents kind of break out of the stereotype, but also anybody else who is kind of battling a stereotype in their head too, if that's their ethnicity, their background, where they come from, what they look like, the hobbies they're into. I just think so many times young people in particular can be really marginalised and put into a box, and be really limited from unleashing their potential.
What happened to you? What was the social media commentary, or actually talkback commentary?
Yes.
When your story first got told publicly.
Yes, correct. I think it was a couple of weeks after I initially told my parents. I was feeling really confident in being a father myself, and being the dad that I was listening to News Talk ZB, I think. And the topic came about was how you have changed being a father. So obviously hearing all of these awesome dads calling up and saying their story. So I decided to do the same. So I pulled over in my car and gave the MC a call and told him my story, how I was head boy at my college and also a father to a little girl. And then it went to an ad break, and that was really surreal for me. My first time ever speaking on any media platform like that, and especially live. So I went to that advertisement. I was driving. I was like, whoa, that was cool. I got a bit of a buzz out of that. And it went back into the radio segment, and the topic changed through how you've changed through being a father to, should this Noa guy be head boy or not? So then I was driving, listening to all of these randoms and complete strangers calling up and talking about my life and saying that I'd ruined not just my own life, but also my daughter's, because I've had my baby at a young age. And that was really, really tough, because obviously I wasn't expecting that. And it just opened me up to so much judgment and really opened my eyes up to understand this is a really big problem in New Zealand, that people are speaking so harshly on young parents, because this doesn't just affect the parent, it also affects their kid if they don't have the confidence to pursue entrepreneurship or their career progression or just pick up other things.
What else is more subtle? Talk back is talk back, and often you'll hear a certain perspective because of that. It's kind of self-selecting. You might get a range of views, you might not. But what's been the more subtle experiences you've had in different environments where someone might not have overtly come out and said something, but you just feel someone's making a call, and either it hurts or you think, actually, you've got that completely wrong? I think there's been many examples. I think a main one is just going to a public setting with your kid, if that's shopping or taking her to the park, and you know that feeling when you know people are watching you. That's what you can feel. You can feel the eyes. You know what's going on behind the eyes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's always been really, really tough to deal with. I haven't necessarily had people come up to me and say, hey, what are you doing? But I do have friends and other dads and mums who have had that happen to them. Yeah.
Your experience as she's gone through these 3 years, what are some of the memories that have just blown your mind, the firsts?
I think just seeing her advance in her communication and how she talks and holds herself as a little person has been really, really cool from my own perspective. And also seeing her grow up with my little baby brother, because they're 2 days apart. So it's awesome to have them being able to hang out together, get up to mischief. She's just such an awesome little girl that's full and confident and wants to try new things.
What is it that younger parents do need? All parents need, actually, but younger parents in particularly need, and I'm wondering if you hit on it before. It's a time where normally you are free to be thinking just about you and what you're going to do with your life. And is there a risk sometimes, because of this challenge in your life and this commitment in your life at that age, you actually might make some decisions that aren't best for the long term? Is that where people really need some support and encouragement?
I think in terms of young parents in particular, something that I've really struggled with is some sort of wraparound support. And because you don't really hear many stories around other young fathers or young mums doing some really, really cool things and saying, hey, they can actually make it and do good stuff. So I think a big part for me would be having some sort of network of young dads or young mums where we're all relatively young and going through the same stuff and battling the same stereotype.
There's that great school, isn't there, where the young mums are often going and finishing their school education together, and there's site on care on site rather to allow them to do that. But it is an attitude thing as well, isn't it? It's not about limiting what someone can do because they're raising a baby at a young age. Did you find yourself questioning that though, because you had plans for uni, I think, and even enrolled?
Yeah.
And what happened then?
So I was all enrolled to go to university. Post college, obviously, and I found that a lot of my friends were going to university just to fill out a blank canvas, and just to get stuck into something because they weren't too sure what they actually wanted to pursue. And that is all good and well, but I was feeling a little bit different as I had a little human to look after as well, my little Kayla. And I was just thinking different possibilities, because it's a massive, massive decision for any 18-year-old to invest tens of thousands of dollars into tertiary study, especially if they're unsure of what they actually want to do for the rest of their life. So I was all enrolled to do a marketing and communications degree at Massey University, and about 3 weeks out to the initial starting date, I cancelled the application and was kind of like, cool, I'm going to try and get some practical work, some practical experience, just so one, I can supply money for my family and also learn stuff a bit more practically too.
So this has got you into the social enterprise place. As we said, you do some work with Inspiring Stories, and you've also got your own social enterprise.
Yes. So I do work at Inspiring Stories, so that's a nationwide charitable trust, and we work and operate to see every young New Zealander unleash their potential to change the world. Pretty big, bold statement, but we do that through a whole vast range of different programs. And one of the programs that they do run is a big event called Festival for the Future, which I attended in my last year as head boy. And that really opened up my eyes to social entrepreneurship and how much good can happen through business. And from then, I started up my own social enterprise called Increase Clothing, where we collaborate with local New Zealand artists and put their beautiful artwork onto our t-shirts. And from then, sell that and give 100% of our profits to fund young parents to attend different leadership development opportunities. So last year, we sent 3 young mums from a teen parent unit up in Auckland to Festival for the Future, which was really cool. And also sent a young mother to a 21-day Outward Bound course.
Brilliant. And even being able to see those examples is encouraging to someone, isn't it? You know, it's what I keep coming back to is that you've obviously got a lot of family support, and you and Kayla's mum, obviously you're sharing the care, as we said,
Yep.
but both of you have got that family support around you, and you must have on your mind someone who really doesn't. You know,
Definitely.
It's you must look at that now and think, wow.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, it is really, really tough. And I guess I'm just really lucky in some ways to have a family with so much awesome wraparound support. And I know that a lot more young mums and young dads out there don't have that. So their pathway is so much more complex than mine is.
However, the same thing gets in the way, doesn't it? The same self-talk, or the sense of other people's. It's not so much their judgments. It just you internalise it as, oh well, that's the way it is for me.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what you're doing with young people is showing, no, actually, you could be doing this or you could be doing that,
Exactly.
and other people are, and just leaving that as a possibility.
For sure.
Changing the story in the head.
For sure. I strongly believe that age doesn't determine if you're going to be a good parent, but being a good parent determines if you're going to be a good parent. And I think that's the same in any other situation, the same in leadership. You can be at whatever age to be a leader, and XYZ too.
Good to talk. Thank you, Noa Woolloff. And don't forget, you can hear all our parenting segments. You can subscribe to them on the series and podcast page on RNZ. It's called It Takes a Village.